Welcome, everybody. Happy Wednesday and happy tax day. Mike and I were just talking about how excited we are that it's tax day, and we get to talk Social Security on tax day. So that's always fun. A couple housekeeping items before we get started with the presentation today. As always, this webinar is being recorded and it will be available in the workshop library early next week. If you would like a direct link to the recording to be sent to you, just send us a note to coach@twowestadvisors.com, and as soon as the recording is available, we'll send it out to you. The Q&A function is on for this webinar, though we are reserving questions until the very end of the presentation. Mike's put together a very full, very wonderful presentation for us today, so we will spend all the time at the end answering any questions that we can. So, without further ado, introducing the one and only Mr. Mike Curran. Take it away, my friend.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking the time. Today, we're going to talk about Social Security on tax day. We didn't want to do something as lame as talk about taxes or anything like that, so we're distracting you with another exciting topic of Social Security. I actually get really jazzed about talking about this, so it's really cool. But we're going to be talking about Social Security, how to make better decisions around it. For many, Social Security ends up being the largest income source in retirement. It's also one of the most misunderstood. And so on our monthly webinars, Amber and I were just talking about this behind the scene. This is one of the this one in particular is the most attended of any that we do. So I've been blessed to be able to give this presentation over the last probably 4 or 5 years or so. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Now, a lot of slides, but we're not going to stay on any one slide very long. And then we should have plenty of time at the end for questions. I think the presentation will be about 30 minutes or so. So anyway, yeah. So thank you for being here. All right. So my face on the screen there a minute ago. So just so I can introduce myself, my name is Mike Curran, a financial advisor and planner with Two West. My 12th year here at Two West, and I've been helping individuals and family plan for retirement now for over 20 years. I love doing it, but man, time sure flies. I can't believe it. It flies, doesn't it? I can't believe I've been in this career for this long, but it's been certainly a blessing. My role, I think, is to help people make informed decisions around retirement, and certainly Social Security's a big part of that. Every day I get to talk about something different, whether it be investments or financial planning or Medicare or, in a lot of cases, Social Security. Um, so the agenda is where we're going to spend the next 30 to 40 minutes together. We'll basically start with the basics, how Social Security works, and then I'll talk about and show you something that most people completely miss about how benefits actually grow over time. And then we're going to spend most of our time on what I think really matters is how to make the best decision for your situation. Because Social Security is individualized. Everybody's got a different path. Everybody's got a different journey toward their what's right for them and their family. And so there's a lot that goes into it. So because the difference between the average decision and an optimized decision can certainly be significant over time. So let's jump into it. So what is Social Security? I mean, most people obviously know what that is, but it's actually three separate programs rolled into one. It goes by the letters OASDI, and I say this every year because no one ever really sees that. Or every once in a while, you read an article and you see those letters, and you really don't know what it means. So if we look at the next slide, it stands for old age, which is obviously our retirement, survivor insurance, and disability insurance. So old age, survivor, and disability insurance is what I can't even say it, OASDI stands for. So at its core, look, Social Security is designed to provide income for retirement along with protection for disability and protection for survivors. So nearly everyone pays into the system, and for many people, it becomes a meaningful part of their retirement. In some cases, it becomes, most or all of their retirement income, even though necessarily it's not designed to be so. The system's evolved over time. It adjusts for inflation, demographics, economic conditions. And I think that's part of why Social Security feels more complicated than people expect it to be. There's just a lot that goes with it. So if we look at the next slide, I don't like putting necessarily so many letters on one slide, but it really is good to hear a little bit about the history. And I'll spend very little time on any of this, but it really was a shifted from a pay-as-you-go system back in the early days into following some 1983 amendments when Ronald Reagan was president. They introduced taxes, raised the retirement age to build up a bunch of surpluses because they already saw that, what was going to happen with the baby boomers. And so in 1977 was the first reforms were introduced. They introduced tax increases meant to build those reserves. Then, following the crisis in the 1980s, a lot of people don't remember that, but I do. And so, anyway, they had some legislation that moved to collect more in taxes than were paid out. They wanted to generate surpluses for later. And we actually went through the surplus era for a long time. It was 1985 to 2020, where we built up so the Social Security and had definitely excess funds. They invested them in special issue treasury bonds, and they formed what are called the trust fund assets. And so we're starting to hear a little bit more about this trust fund because it's becoming depleted. We didn't think we were going to necessarily need that, but so around 2021 was the first time where we had costs exceeding income. And the system was relying on the interest and that accumulated trust fund reserves to pay the benefits. So right now, the system's paying out more than it takes in, and that's not a good thing, obviously, and relying on those trust fund resources, reserves to make up the difference. And that's what leads us to the 2034 discussion, which we'll come back to shortly. But a lot of people have heard about the magical year of 2034. It looks like these will be depleted. And what does that mean for the system? What does that mean for us? That just happens to be the year I think I turned 65. So anyway, obviously wondering necessarily myself. So we won't spend much time on the history of the numbers because I think some numbers are good to look at. They're worth mentioning. And so I have a version of this every year where I just take you through a little bit of, when the program started back in 1935. So we're at 90 years basically since FDR signed that into law. In 1937, we got the lovely FICA, which stands for Federal Insurance Contributions Act, which I never knew before I started doing these presentations. But now I see it, you see it on your paycheck. It's like, oh, FICA. Oh, okay, that's my Social Security being taken out of my check. So benefits began in the 1940s and then disabilities in the 1950s. And interestingly, cost of living adjustments, what we call the COLA nowadays, were written into the code in 1972, but the first one wasn't paid till 1975. So they went from 1940 to 1975 with no COLA, which was interesting. And then, like I said earlier, President Reagan in 1983 signed into law the taxation of those benefits. So before that, they were not taxed. There was a tax to build up the surpluses, but there wasn't actually a tax on the benefit themselves. So now we're in 2026 now, and there's been over 500 million people where Social Security numbers have been issued since the inception of the program. Started in 1940 with just 222,000 Americans receiving the Social Security benefits, at the time less than 1% of the total population. And now we're looking at projected to be 75 million, up from 68 million last year in 2025. So just amazing if you really try to think about that. And the first check in 1940 was for $22.71. Now the average monthly benefit $2,071. One interesting study that I've glommed onto is that 96% of folks leave money on the table by not from a lack of understanding. So they don't understand the types of benefits they're able to collect. They don't uh, claim the specific benefits and possible strategies when they're looking at more than one benefit, and then the specific rules that impact the claiming timing and strategy. Um, when I hear 96% of the people leave money on the table, and I talk to folks about Social Security a lot, it gloms up the question, like if I was in front of you in a room, I would want to know how confident you feel that you understand all of your Security options. So think about it. I think we all have this default, oh, I'm going to retire at X, or I'm going to take my Social Security at full retirement age, or at 70, or at 62, because I think the program's going bankrupt. And but how many people really understand that there are just a lot of options out there in terms of what you can do, and that there's a study out there that says 96% of the folks leave money on the table from not actually doing the optimized thing to do. So that's kind of scary. Um, the system has shifted from about 159 workers per beneficiary to closer to 2 to 1 today. That is part of obviously the long-term pressure on the system. So at the same time, and I'm going pretty quick through these, Amber, so I'm already at the how long do we need to plan for retirement? So, at the same time, people are living longer. And so we're seeing that many retirees are going to need income for 25, 20, 25, 30, even more years in retirement. So these decisions matter more than ever. So Social Security is complicated. If you've ever looked into this and thought, this is more complicated than I expected, you are certainly not alone. There's a lot of terms that are make no sense. There's a couple of terms that really only Social Security deals with, and so if you hear them, you have absolutely no idea what they mean. And so we'll talk briefly about a few, but obviously in a more in-depth conversation with you personally, maybe, or with one of our advisors, we'll obviously let you know what some of the most important terms terms are. All right, so we on the next slide we have the just some basics before we get into the strategy conversation, and that is, look, you've got to be 62 years of age at a minimum to be eligible for Social Security, and the credits that you get, and you can get a maximum of 4 per year. You need 40 credits. So obviously, I'm a math major, so that is 10 years, as little as 10 years, you can be eligible for Social Security. Now, if you do that, you're going to have 25 years of zeros next to your name, and that amount is going to be super small. So the benefits are actually calculated on the indexed average of the 35 highest years of earnings. So obviously, if you work, and also indexed means adjusted for inflation. So they're going to take those 35 highest years, they are indexed for inflation. So if you work 40 years, obviously they're going to take the highest 35 years. If you work 34 years, you're going to have 1 year at a zero. Okay, so that's literally all part of the strategy, and we'll talk a little bit more later how you can kind of check your earnings record and all of that. So anyway, things most people know there, but just wanted to touch on some basics here for those that don't know. Um, so, like I said, I'll pick out a few of the terminology points in this presentation. I think full retirement age is something you ought to know. The term PIA is something you ought to know. And then there's something called the earnings test. And so full retirement age is what most people, they know that number. They know that uh, they that is set 67 now. We've gotten to the point where everybody that's taking it has hit their full retirement age, and that number now has gotten to 70. We started at 65 and we went every 2 months, and then now we've gotten to where it's 67. That is what's called the normal retirement age, or really the first age you're eligible to receive full unreduced benefits. Because if you take it early between 62 and 67, you're going to have those benefits reduced. So now you hit the full retirement age, your FRA, based on your birth year, and you're going to get full unreduced benefits. Now, it doesn't mean it's the maximum that you get, but it is the first time you're going to get your full unreduced benefits. It's also a time that you could actually continue to work and you could make as much money as you want and not get your earnings, I'm sorry, your benefits reduced. All right. And then PIA is just one number. It's literally the amount of the monthly benefit you're going to receive at that full retirement age. So once you hit full retirement age, you get a monthly amount that you're given. That is your PIA. And it only is one number and it happens at one point in your Social Security career. But it's usually a pretty important one. That is when I would say the majority of people do retire is at their full retirement age. And then again, I said that earlier, but once you hit that full retirement age, then you're no longer subject to the earnings test. And I'll show you that, or that it's on slide 36. I referenced that. So. All right, a lot of things, something people don't know is that there is a cap on the income that is subject to Social Security. Now, if you make less than 176,100 in 2026 and you haven't reached that kind of level of earnings, then you're never going to see that because you're always going to look at your payroll stub and see that Social Security and Medicare are being taken out. But there is a limit if you're blessed to make more than $176,100 in a year for the paychecks past that in the year, you're going to find that paycheck's larger because your Social Security is not being taken out of it that because they'll cap it at we're only going to take it out up to that 176 100. And so that number was the same last year in 2025, back 168.6 in 2024 and moved on from there. Um, so as that rises over time, it contributes to a higher potential benefit for yourself. So all right. So most people believe that benefits only rise with inflation, and that's really only part of the story. Um, so there's two forces that are driving the higher benefits. Yes, there is definitely inflation, but there's also the wage growth indexing that I talked about earlier. And that's really what's driving benefits higher over time. If I try to put this in English, because even when I read that, it's like wage growth index, and what the heck does that mean? It's just that Social Security adjusts your past earnings to reflect how wages have risen over time with inflation. Uh, for example, in 1995 to today, the wages have roughly doubled. So if you were making 30 grand in 1995, it's going to be counted as $60,000 in today's dollars. So this wage growth indexing is done before calculations on the benefits are done. So why just this is really why benefits keep rising. And so just to give you an example, just show you what the maximum, and this number is actually the full retirement age back to our term that we just learned. If you hadn't learned that before, is the FRA in 2022 was $3,345, a little bit larger in 2024. And then we jump up to 2026, and now that maximum FRA is $4,182 per month. So, I say it there on the bottom. The real opportunity isn't just what you're going to get; it's how you optimize that, and that's really where the strategy of this whole thing comes in. So to jump in, and we'll talk about obviously the claiming here, which is I think the most important decision we have in this whole thing. I asked you a question about how confident you feel in your Social Security options knowledge. I again, talk to a lot of people and they're like, I read this or I heard this from somebody. Hey, I should take my benefits to 70 because that's gonna be the max I get. Or hey, I need to take them as early as possible. Um, and I think you should too. I think that would work really well for you. You ought to do that. I mean, people are giving other people advice, and so I say this just like investment advice is take everything that somebody, a colleague, a friend, family member says with a grain of salt because everything depends on your particular situation, your family, if you're married, and all of that. And so, but both those answers could be right. And if it were true that say everybody should do it at 70 because they're going to get the quote unquote max amount of money, that may or may not be right, actually. And so again, there's other decisions that are taken into account with this. So, but when to claim is certainly the most important decision concerning Social Security, and there's certainly not a one size fits all answer. Okay, so what we typically see, or me anyway, I'll speak for myself, is folks that don't have a strategy toward Social Security. They have a default decision. They know that they think they want to take it at 67. Again, I think that's not bad at all, but it's kind of funny because a lot of people are like, well, I want to retire at that date. And really, the one of the most important things about that is that you actually can get to 67 and continue to work, and now you can make as much money as you can and not get your benefits reduced. But anyway, most people pick out and go, okay, my default is to retire at 60, or at least take Social Security at 67. So um, but anyway, once we actually model this out for people, I would say the optimal decision is often different than they expected, and sometimes us too, as if we're just looking over their stuff. So I put some of the factors down on that slide for you to look at. There's obviously a lot more than that, and so that's one of the bigger conversations we have when I'm talking to clients about their Social Security and how they can take it. Um, so, all right. So if we look at the next slide about how much we're going to receive, I mean, your benefit depends on what you earned, when you claim it, and how well you know the rules. So two people with identical earnings can have very different outcomes simply based on the timing of their decisions. So it can definitely depend dramatically on a lot of factors again. So, not to be dramatic with the next slide, but there is an impact for filing early. Um, so, remember, we learned earlier that the PIA amount is one number. It's the monthly amount that you get at your FRA. And so, if you look on this slide, on the 67 slide there in the middle, the average there for 2026 is projected to be 2071, $2,071. I said that earlier. But if you take your benefit early, you get more checks, but you get smaller ones. If you wait, you get fewer checks, but you get larger ones. This is obviously obvious. So there's really a trade-off between cash flow today and or maximizing your long-term income. So it's quite a dramatic difference and I said earlier, but so between 62 and 67, you every year that you wait, you make about 6.6% more after your FRA, and if you wait every year past up until you're 70, you're going to make about 8% more on your money. So the difference, obviously, and that chart shows you quite dramatic between the two. So again, you need to look at your particular situation in terms of hey, I want to get this started, I need to, or I'm just ready for it, or Social Security's running out, so I want to get mine while I can. All those kind of things I hear all the time. But trying to map out what's right for you is really probably the best plan for sure. All right, so now let's talk about family strategies. So now in this, in the what we're talking about going forward, we're talking about coordinating two benefits instead of one. So a spouse can receive up to 50% of the other spouse's benefit, even a non-working spouse, if they'll apply at their FRA. So a spouse that where their spouse has already applied for Social Security and taking it, they have to be at least 62. If they are, they're going to get their benefit reduced, just like we talked about the impact of filing early. If you take a spousal benefit early, it's similar in that you're going to get penalized. So again, we look at the maximum a spousal benefit can be is 50%, and that's at your full retirement age. And I did list some of the requirements there. Um, Now, if we look at divorce spouse benefit, I will say in general, this gets complicated, and not to jump to the last line, but I will. Is this is where we definitely want to coordinate and talk to the Social Security office for clarity, especially if you've been divorced a couple different times and you are or are not currently married and all kinds of things. So there's all kind of rules um, um, that that are part of the divorced spouse benefits. So, but even if you're divorced, you may still be eligible. And good news is it does not reduce your ex-spouse benefit. So if you get any guff for them, just hold your horses because I'm not reducing your benefit. So anyway, that's something a lot of people don't know. So if we look at survivor or widow benefits, there's a list of the eligibility there. When one spouse passes away, the surviving spouse receives the higher benefit. And then if we go to the next slide, then um, so when we think about a survivor or a widow benefit, and we really don't think of this a lot of times when we're going to um, apply for Social Security, if you do have a spouse, you have a family, your earnings benefit is not just about you. It can be about, the survivors if something happens to you. So it's about protecting that income for the surviving spouse potentially for decades. And so again, that choice of when to claim Social Security for different reasons now is the most important decision. So it's kind of interesting. And again, it gets a little complicated. And I'm not in this presentation going to go into the particulars of all this stuff. That's where a one-on-one meeting with somebody would be a little more helpful to do that. So but anyway, so the next slide is just a picture of a Social Security earnings record. I mention this every year because it is amazing how many times I hear that people check their earnings record and it doesn't look correct, or they find out that something wasn't correct. So in this example, um, you know, we can look at this and say, well, I don't remember what I made in 2016, and this is not mine, but in 2016, but you can kind of tell there's a trending to it, or I remember back in, these years I worked for that company and I didn't make very much money. But you can just look at it and if nothing else, you can tell when there's not a zero, right? Because those zeros can really hurt you. And obviously, if you do a tax return every year, there should be some sort of earnings record. So it's really important to review those. So I'll talk about this later at the end, but I tell people all the time, go to ssa.gov and sign up for my Social Security page. Um, I don't know when those statements come in snail mail, but supposedly they're once a year, and maybe they do. It just doesn't seem like it's very consistent. But I don't worry about that anymore because I've gone and I've set up a my Social Security um, uh, on the app on the SSA.gov app, and I can check my record anytime. I can look at all the different resources they have on that website or whatever. So I certainly encourage people if they haven't done it, and really even if you're younger, because it's maybe more fresher in your mind, to start to take a look at that earnings record for sure. All right. So kind of depressing, but most folks don't know about this. I'm always surprised when I talk to people and they're like, "What? Social Security is taxed? I mean, I've already paid taxes on it, haven't I?" Yes, but it is what it is. So it can actually be up to 85% of your benefits um, being taxed. So definitely coordinating with other income sources becomes important because the more income you show in retirement, the more that your Social Security's going to be taxed. So again, a lot of people don't know that. It gets a little wonky here, and I won't go into the particulars necessarily. I'll just mention a few things. But we have a term that is only a Social Security term. If you tried to use this term anywhere else, no one would really know what you're talking about. It's kind of like IRMA with Medicare, if anybody's ever heard that. Like that's the only time you'd ever hear that term. This one is provisional income. So there's actually a formula for provisional income. 50% of your Social Security benefit plus your ordinary income plus your dividends, capital gains plus non-taxable interest. So hopefully you have an accountant that can help you with that. But you can kind of think of provisional income as a thermostat. As your other income goes up, it turns up how much of your Social Security gets exposed to taxes. Or we can think about it like a measuring stick that the IRS uses to decide how much of your Social Security becomes taxable. Because your Social Security really starts in a tax-free bucket. And then that provisional income is what determines how much of the bucket spills over to be taxed. So anyway, a lot of different ways to look at that. Kind of complicated, but there is a formula. And then on the next slide, there's um, a chart. And so you can chat GPT or Google what the provisional income limits are. You'll see they're pretty low. Look, if you're making over $34,000 in income in retirement, then a certain percentage of your assets are going to be taxable. And really not doubled if you're married. So it just over 44,000. So pretty low. So it's really, again, really good to know, good to coordinate, good to have a strategy for how you're taking your income in retirement and all of that. Okay, so will Social Security be there for me? I hear that. I don't know about daily per se, but because I do talk a lot to younger folks at all the participating hospitals and schools and things like that, where I get to talk to these participants that 2 West takes care of their retirement plan. But we talk a lot about it. The younger folks know for the most part, they've got in their mind that say they're under 40 years old, they don't think they're going to get Social Security at all. And so I hope that's not the case because they have paid in for some years. They should get some benefit for that. But, will it be there for me? We think most likely, yes. Although, again, the younger you are, the more some or all of it's in jeopardy. But the fallacy is that Social Security is going away completely. Um, as we said earlier, that trust fund may be deleted or depleted around 2034, but that doesn't mean Social Security is going to go away. Even without the changes, a large portion of the benefits are still going to would still be paid. So I would say the issue is adjustment, not disappearance of the program. And the goal is to plan based on what we know today and to stay flexible. Um, so in short, if I look at the next slide, I mean, yes, I mean, there's a lot of reforms that we can do. I just put a couple of them down here, but there's a lot of changes that can be made. And I put it there in white. It's our opinion that adjustments will be made. Social Security will remain solvent for many generations to come. And it's a mistake to base your Social Security claiming decision solely on the reason that Social Security will be insolvent in the future. So we really have to look at what the laws are now. Like I said, be flexible. Know that it's got to change. It's at some point we're going to have to. stop kicking this can down the road. So if we look at the next slide, and I have shown this one before a couple years ago, I've used it the last couple years, but on your Social Security statement, when you go to it, um, you know, uh, it says right there, your estimate is based on current law. Congress makes changes to the law in the past and can do so at any time. And the law governing the benefit may change because by 2034, the payroll taxes collected will be enough to only pay 79% of scheduled benefits. So they're in essence warning you of this, telling you of this. They don't want this to be the first time you've ever heard about it when you call to get your Social Security. And so I've heard all kind of different percentages. I've heard the year being changed around a little bit. And so the latest number I actually heard was 83% by 2034, but I've heard all kind of dates and percentages. So, it's real now. We need Congress and Senate to stop kicking this can down the road. Something's got to change. And so we believe that when push comes to shove, it's going to change and the program will be solvent for many years to come for sure. Okay, so will Social Security be enough to live on? Look, it was never designed to replace 100% of your income. Uh, it's just one piece of the puzzle. We know from studies what it takes to replace 100% of your income in retirement, and that's being done through your retirement plan. If you can save 15% or more, including what your employer's putting in for 30 plus years, sounds kind of ominous, but we know that you are going to be able to replace 100% or more of the highest income you ever had in that 30-year period. Okay. First of all, you don't need 100% of the highest salary you ever had in retirement. But so I put an example here. This is what from 2025, what the average retiree spending is, $55,000. And, most folks, Social Security is not going to be anywhere near that. And again, it was designed not to replace 100%. It was designed to be supplemental, one piece of the puzzle. And so, that's what I think we try to do as financial planners is try to plan as best we can for what the different income sources that we can produce for you are. So I mentioned this earlier on slide 36 is the retirement earnings test. Um, and if you claim early and continue working, there are income limits, but your benefits do get adjusted after your FRA. So again, that's one of the most important things about the FRA is that even if you claimed early and you got your benefits reduced, you went through this earnings test and you found out they're going to take, for every $2 above a certain limit, they're going to take $1. You do, in essence, get that money back as it's baked into your benefit after your FRA. Okay. So again, this earnings test is only if you're taking that between 62 and 67. Next slide, real quick. It's just one of the sheets from our Social Security planning worksheet that we ask clients and start to go through the process. So I added that as part of the presentation. And then the actual logistics of Social Security and filing for benefits, we can apply, on the internet. You go out to ssa.gov that I said earlier. You go meet with somebody at the Social Security office. I would, especially maybe in Kansas City or Johnson County or whatever, where the majority of people live here, is give it some time and that maybe even a couple of months before. You can do it over the phone. I've heard a lot of people, and even not too tech savvy people that I know have said they've done it. They've done it online. So, but I did add the 800 number. I did double check that this is current, all that good stuff. But usually about 3 months before you want to take Social Security, or at least after the age of, or right up at, just before or after the age of 62. If you want to talk to them about your options, you don't necessarily know when you want to take Social Security. So I will say in general, the Social Security, I've said this for the past couple of years, and I believe it, that Social Security office, like the DMV, and I know everybody's not a fan all the time, and it depends on your situation, but it has gotten the process, the people have gotten a lot better in terms of them being more helpful for you. So, I put some tips for maximizing Social Security benefits. To my point earlier, um, it this will, I mean, if you wait and postpone to take your Social Security as late as possible, it will most likely it will maximize your benefits. It may not be the most you get, depending on again how you claim and the coordination of all that. But if you wait, it'll give you an 8% increase if you wait every year past 67. If you coordinate with your spouse to maximize your familiar benefits, you'll maximize your benefits. If you're a widower and you claim your survivor benefits and then you delay to claim on your own record, then your own record increases and then you can switch over to your own Social Security down the road. So there's a lot of different strategies. So we want to optimize and definitely have a plan. Okay. So Social Security is not just a benefit decision, it's really a strategy decision. It's not something you want to guess on, and that's why we walk you through a personalized analysis so we can look at those options clearly. I put a slide on there in terms of the changes for 2026 and, 2.8% COLA projection, modest increases in dollar amounts, nothing dramatic, continued steady growth. Um, so anyway, I hope this has given you a little more clearer understanding about how Social Security works, but really more importantly, how to think about making the right decisions. Because as you can see, the right strategy really depends on your particular situation. So yeah, what questions do we have? I think Amber said it earlier, but we'll stay as long as we can answer questions. And Amber, what do you think? Do we have anybody that's asked any questions so far?
We got a couple questions. Just a reminder, everybody, if you want to use the Q&A function to pop your questions into the chat there, that is helpful, and we'll get to everybody's questions. We'll hang out as long as we need. And again, if you guys have to hop, because we're at getting close to time here, you can send an email to coach@2westadvisors.com. And as soon as the webinar recording is available, typically early the following week, we'll send you a direct link to the recording. It'll also be available in the workshop library on the financial planning resources page. The QR code on the screen as well, that will take you directly to the financial planning resources page. That's where you can get access to all of the benefits that are available to you through 2West as part of your employer benefits. So go ahead and pop questions into the Q&A. And I will say, just in case we get any questions about this, we can't really speculate on what to expect for changes to Social Security. Unfortunately, like Mike mentioned, we got to really wait for, got changes from the powers that be to know what to expect moving forward. So we're going to answer just based on the best information that we have as of today. And we're just going to try to not speculate just because we don't know. So, all right, let's get started here. Mike, first question for you. So you kind of touched on this a little bit, and it's a little bit like I'm saying with the no speculation, unfortunately. But if we're not going to be full retirement age by 2034 when the trust fund is depleted, what do you do? What should you be doing to prepare for that?
Well, I don't think we do anything differently, but I mean, I don't know what you can do differently because we don't have any numbers of what it would be reduced to. Again, I'm going with the full belief that they're going to make changes. Um, and then we'll plan around those changes, but we're going to plan going forward like it's no different, I would say. You might have a different strategy in terms of for you in terms of what you're going to do for your clients, and I'd love to hear that. We just again we don't know, so we can't do something based on what we don't know. I think if that's going to happen in 2034, and that's why I said earlier, I think they have to get going. They have to start making some changes. Uh, they're going to. make some people mad, probably anyway. So let's get this going because we can't wait until 2034 to know what's going on. We have to know before that, hey, it is going to be depleted and we're only going to have 79%, and that actually came true. And so now that we know, and it looks like that's going to happen, or it did happen before then we can plan from there. But again, I don't think there's anything that folks can do necessarily that they haven't been doing before. How would you answer that question?
Yeah, I'd say the only thing that I do for like the younger generation, when talking to younger individuals, we've used the 15% of income being saved for retirement. That's been a rule of thumb for a long time. And that's the only adjustment that I make is for anybody, especially for folks like in their 20s and 30s, where it is like a big mystery of what to expect, increase that rule of thumb a little bit. You're going to have to save more in order to provide the different level of income because one thing the Social Security Administration has done so far is adjust the floor of income that we can expect from Social Security. So Mike and I are pretty different ages. If his floor of income, if we had the same income level by the end time we claim Social Security and his floor of income replaced 30% of his income, I could probably anticipate a maybe 23% floor of income from Social Security. So that's something that they have already put out as a minor change for the younger generation. So if you can save more, if you can provide yourself a cushion for the just in case, it doesn't hurt. So that's the only different perspective I take.
No, that's excellent. I do that. That is something that's good. Yeah, my mind didn't go there from this. I'm so concentrated on this presentation, but you're right. Definitely. And again, that's where that younger generation, like I talked about in the presentation, they they are assuming there's not going to be any Social Security. And so they are, if they can, uh, are more focused on saving more money. So it's definitely something that we talk about more for sure. But I'm glad you said that. That's why I asked you, right? So thank you.
All right. And so this one is going into the divorcee benefits. And it's talking about that 10-year marriage requirement. So are they strict on the married for 10 years? Like if you were married for 9.5 years, would that count? Or is it like it's got to be exactly 120 months?
Um, yes, they are strict on it. It is 10 years. It's not 9 years and 364 days. It's literally you had to be
No,
married.
no.
You had to be married for 10 years. So I think in any of these things, when they have the requirements for these, they've got to choose something. So it's been interesting. I've actually had a couple of situations where somebody's been divorced and they were about to get remarried, and uh, they actually decided to hold off because they were going to be able to um, get their ex-spouse's benefits if they held off. So I you know the so yes, that 10-year rule is, I won't belabor this, but the 10-year rule is solid.
So for the spousal benefit, so if you're claiming on your spouse's record, your spouse is claiming on your record. So for the spousal benefit, so are you getting your check plus half of theirs, or just refresh on how the spousal benefit works?
Well, so one of the spouses, usually the main earner, is filing. They're filing on their record, obviously, and they've got their amount, and so they're going to get that. At that point, after uh, they're they're signed up for their benefit, then their spouse, again, you gotta look at the rules in terms of being at least 62, but again, can get up to 50% if they are at that FRA, if they're at 67. And so this gets interesting when we've got um, wide differences in age. is where you're really like, okay, I'm 67 and I'm gonna take this, but my spouse is 62. She could apply at that point for because she is eligible or they are eligible, but they're gonna get a much reduced benefit. And so again, maybe that works and they can delay taking their own and go on their own record and delay that till later. So again, I don't know if I answered the question, but yeah, I mean, the one goes on their own record and then the other will be at some semblance of as long as they're over 62, some semblance between about 30 to 50% of the amount that the spouse is getting.
Yeah.
How did you interpret that question?
Yeah, so I think kind of like you're saying, so it's the primary earner and the spouse. So the primary earner, they get to age 67, they claim their benefit, let's call it $1,000 per month. Now the spouse is eligible for 50% of that benefit, but primary earner will still only receive a check for $1,000. But spouse is
Oh,
eligible to receive 50% of that, so they could receive upwards of $500 per month as long as they claim at 67. So it's
correct.
each person only gets one check. You don't get like a check and a half for claiming on a spouse or having your spouse claim on yours. Everybody gets their own check.
Correct. It's literally a check made out to the spouse for, yeah, in that case, half of it. And that's what I'm saying. If we have similar ages, and obviously that person's 67, and like my wife and I are 2 months apart, my wife's 2 months older than I am. So if I claimed being the primary earner at 67, then my wife would already be 67. And if I got, the average $2,071, then my wife's benefit would be, 1,035.50 or whatever. So, because we would both be claiming in our FRA. So again, it all depends on it's per that person and their age. So yes.
And this one kind of ties into this conversation. It's almost flip-flopped to your you and your wife's situation. So for these individuals, they're 4 years apart. The lower income earner is the older one. Okay, so that the older individual is already retired at 62, and their spouse, who's 58, is the higher income earner. So if the spouse, being older, is now having to wait for their younger primary earner to claim Social Security, what happens in that scenario? How is the lower income earner compensated, and what changes when the high earner claims eventually?
Wow, your young brain probably understood that because you got to look at that question. Let's hear your answer first. I want to hear your answer first. I'm still taking notes on what you just said. So I got 4 years
So,
apart, older retired at 62, the spouse is 58.
yep,
The
spouse is
older, the
58.
older makes less money
Yes. So this
at
is
a
my
lesser record.
understanding, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. So we're all being judged according to that FRA, that full retirement age, right? And you claim, and your benefit is reduced by how early or late you claim compared to that full retirement age. So for this gentleman who claimed at 62, you've now reduced your benefit from your full retirement age, that primary insurance amount, the full amount you were eligible at 67.
Yeah,
You could have
I,
claimed that at 67, gotten your full benefit amount, but you claimed at 62. You've now reduced your benefit by 30%.
correct.
That 30% reduction applies to whatever the highest number is you could be eligible for. So if your full retirement age amount was $1,000, you claim at 62, you're taking that 30% decrease, you're getting $700 a month. But your spouse waits until their full retirement age to claim. Their benefit is $3,000. per month, so more than double what yours was. So in theory, they claimed they get $3,000 a month. You are eligible as a spouse for 50% of that benefit, $1,500. But you claimed at 62, so you get a permanent 30% decrease off of that $1,500 you're eligible for. Because you already locked it in by claiming early, it's going to apply to whatever that highest number you become eligible for is, whether it's your own record or your spouse's record. Am I thinking that
Yeah.
right?
So you nailed it. And this is where I was talking about the, you know, um, the maximum amount of money you can project out for somebody could be different depending on their familial situation, their spousal benefit.
Yeah.
So we've got all kind of different scenarios, and wow, that one gave me a headache. But as you were telling that, it kind of came clear to me what you were talking about, and so yes, I mean, absolutely, and so projecting out too, what in that kind of situation is maybe that person retired at 62, but you as their advisor would recommend that you do not take Social Security. uh, Go ahead and retire. I mean, if you're retiring, you've got some money that you can produce some income for you, and we're going to hold off to Social Security because of the situation with your spouse. And so that's definitely one of the questions we're asking is, you know, does your spouse have a Social Security record? What is that? Let's look at it. Oh my gosh, we haven't. I mean, 9 out of 10 times we're setting up my Social Security account for these people because they have not looked at both of their records. They spent so much time looking at the primary earners record, maybe, and so they didn't even take all of this into account. So we definitely or would earn our money on this one in terms of giving some advice on that for sure.
And
But
it
yeah,
is just,
you
it's
nailed that
so
situation
nuanced.
though. Say it
It's
again.
so nuanced, like you said, that it's so individualized to their particular circumstances. What incomes do they have to cover them in the meantime? If they're delaying claiming Social Security, it's all very individualized.
Right.
So
So just these few questions, it exacerbates my thought in terms of what I said earlier that don't listen to what anybody else says because again, that may have been great for their situation. It's a disaster for your situation. So, literally everybody's situation's differently. So talk to somebody that knows and that, so we are fiduciaries. We're there to do what's in your best interest, not in ours. And so we're going to listen to that objectively and say, well, here, let's lay this out. Let's look at this. Let's analyze this. Here's what it would look like. Is that what you were thinking? Or hey, should we what do you think about doing X or waiting or, or claiming a different way or whatever. And so you're just not going to get that from anybody else. So
yeah, you really
anyway,
got to hone it in, talk about your particular situation to get a good direction, I think.
yeah, for sure.
And I'm trying to scroll through. I'm trying to like coordinate questions all together. There's a lot of questions in here, guys, so don't mind me if I jump around a little bit. But so someone was asking, like, so are you saying it's one check or the other? Each person gets one check. So you're going to get the check. You're going to get your check, and whether your spouse is claiming on your record or their own record, they are going to receive their own check. It's not that, like, if Mike and I were married and I claimed off his record, he's not going to get a 1.5 check because I claimed on his record. I'm going to get my own check. Same with divorce saves. Like, if Mike and I were married and we got divorced and I claim on his record, he's never going to know about that because I get my own check and it doesn't impact his benefits. So everybody gets their own money from Social Security.
Correct. And then you can't take more than one benefit at a time per person, but you can change your benefit in the the divorced or the so you are going to get married after you've been divorced and you were getting a divorce and then that stops and then should I claim on my own record? Can I, whatever. There's literally just 1,000 different scenarios. So we have to look at each one of those.
All right, let's see. Let's go to the next one. All right. So this person says, I've heard a lot about the break even point being about 80 years old as far as should you claim benefits earlier? Should you delay until 70? Do you have any thoughts on the break even point as it pertains to claiming age?
Um, I would say I do, but they're not all that important because when we're analyzing somebody's situation, I mean, I guess you could talk about the break-even point. Where is it that you've in essence used all the money that you put away for all those years, and now we're going to be taking in essence someone else's or whatever, however you want to look at that break-even point. But
I think this one is that idea of if you claim at 62, you get this reduced dollar amount and you're adding that up over time, right? So you're adding, accumulating your benefits from 62, or if you delayed until 70 and you're accumulating your benefits, that your break even point is in, I think it's your mid 80s at some point, that if you live past your mid 80s, now that you are from an accumulation standpoint, you're better off having delayed because now that you've passed like the accumulation of the reduced benefit amount. Does that make sense?
um, yes, I mean, if we're looking at that, in a lot of cases, the later you wait and the longer you live, the more obviously that decision to wait is going to be a better decision for you.
That's
Uh,
kind of how I think about it is if you have longevity risk, right? Like if you got family living to almost 100, it could behoove you to delay because of that break even point. That's really the only consideration I have thinking about it.
Agreed. Yeah, that's what I think. I literally just get so enraptured in um, the nuances of what the person I'm dealing with is dealing with. We're not even
Yeah.
really necessarily because we just don't know, right? So we're just trying to make the best decision based on their situation right now, their needs of right now, or hey, I really don't have the needs right now. So I think it would be better. I do have longevity in my family. I'm a pretty healthy person, all those kind of things. It makes a lot of sense for me to wait. Um, Other people, it's, I haven't done a great job of saving for retirement. So I can take Social Security a little bit earlier. That can supplement my income. I'm not taking money out of my IRA and letting that cook for longer. That's
Yeah.
anyway, again, just a few more decisions to think about.
So much nuance. So
Yes.
much nuance. Okay, so this person says, to clarify, if I take reduced benefits at 62, and then when I reach my full retirement age, I will then receive my maximum benefit at that time, or does the reduction amount continue?
No, I mean that's the thing is if you take that's why that claiming decision is so important because if you take that at 62, you are going to get that reduced amount. Now, it'll be increased by the wage growth index that I talked about, and then obviously your cost of living adjustment. But you're in essence stuck with that. I mean, technically you can if you make a decision, you have 12 months to change that decision. If you change it and decide, hey, I made a mistake, I'm going to pull out, you have to pay back the money, which almost nobody wants to do when they hear that because they're like, well, I don't have the money. So no, you're stuck with it. You're stuck with that decision.
Okay, I like this one. So we talked about the maximum benefit amount, because I don't know the answer to this question. We've talked about the maximum benefit amount. Do you know if there's a minimum benefit amount that an individual would receive from Social Security? If they were a single person who somehow just did not have a very robust earnings record, like what would be the minimum amount, or would it just be based on did they qualify through the 40 credits, and it's still just based
Wow.
on that.
Gosh,
I
I've
don't
been doing
know.
this. Yeah, I've been doing this a long time. I've never even thought about necessarily is there a minimum? No, I don't think there's a minimum
Okay.
because it's based on the 4 credits per year for the 10 years. So, like I said earlier in that presentation, if you worked 10 years, then you're going to get something. I guess technically, gosh, well, a minimum. Um, I don't know if we could calculate a minimum. So I think it would just be different because it'd be based on your earnings record over those 10 years would be the minimum. If you only worked 10 years, you barely scraped by and you made enough money to get those credits, then
Just got the credits. Yeah.
yeah,
I don't
I
know.
guess technically I think we probably could calculate that. I've never done that.
Yeah. No, it's a curious question. I don't
Yeah,
know. I'm
interesting
not
concept.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this one's about taxes on the benefits. Do you know, like, approximately, and I could go back to the slide if it's helpful. Do you know approximately how much in taxes will come out of Social Security? Is there a scale? Try to find the slide again.
Well, that provisional income which is slide 29, I think, is it takes into account, so it says 50% of your Social Security benefit, then you add your ordinary income, then you add your dividends and capital gains, and then any non-taxable interest that you have. Um, and so if we add up that provisional income, then it'll based on the slide, the next one, 30,
Okay,
then
there we go.
it'll give you what that would mean for you. Um, Technically, it goes a step further, and it would give you a let's see, I even read that. So if you're single and you're in somewhere between, you make between 25 and 34, then um, less of 50% benefits or 50% of provisional income above the 25%. This is when I actually bring in the CPAs.
I tried to calculate this for a client earlier this year, and oh
Yeah.
boy, this is some math. So yes, it basically, the more money you make outside of Social Security, the more taxable your Social Security benefit is. And from a how much tax you'll pay, it really depends on what is your total income from all sources. Because if it pushes you into higher marginal tax brackets because your provisional income is such, it's very touchy. So, um, yeah, hard
Yeah,
one.
I would say in general, it's become this gets into the whole Roth versus pre-tax conversation too, about how you put your contributions in because, um, well, where was I going to go with that? Gosh, my brain is just fried.
You're
But
throwing hard ones at us.
yeah, so there's just a lot of calculations for it. I would say that today, anyway, the clients that I'm working with, they're making way more in income in retirement than they had in the past. And in a lot of cases, they're making more than they were making during their working life. And that's not how the pre-tax was set up. It was set up so that when you get into retirement, most likely your income is going to go down and you're going to pay less taxes. And so that is not necessarily the case. That's where I was kind of going. So going ahead and paying your taxes now or having some Roth contributions, and I know this isn't a Roth versus pre-tax webinar, but it certainly plays into, and it's part of my job as the financial advisor to look at all aspects. Like I said earlier, we're looking at investments, we're looking at how you're putting your contribution into your retirement plan, we're looking at your projections for Social Security. We're looking at a lot of different factors, and we're finding that most folks, I mean, my gosh, nowadays people with the rental income they have off of a house or two or five or my God, 100, somebody I know. But anyway, so they're making more, and it's all taxing their Social Security. But then again, when you get into that too, it's I guess it's less important when you're making that much money. Yes, your benefits are being taxed, but you're not necessarily relying on that.
Right.
So, um,
And
so
there's a good chunk of questions on the spousal benefits. So for everybody with questions about spousal benefits, let's just chunk all of those until the very, very end. So I'm going to fill in the blanks with everybody else. Anybody with spousal questions, we'll get to them. But I just want to make sure we get through all the other ones first here. So this was individually we're talking about that as far as when to start the process to claim Social Security. Just go over that again. If you, when should you start the process for claiming Social Security? Is it like right away at 62, even if you want to claim at 70, or when should you start claiming the actual process of working with Social Security to claim it?
yeah, that's a great question. I mean, look, I mean, I start those conversations with people in their 50s sometimes. I mean, um, we're starting to plan out if they've hired us to be their financial planners and investment managers and all that. That's all part of a conversation that we talk about for years. I guess logistically, um, I would say if you've never talked to anybody and you're 60 or 61 years old, then um, yeah, have that conversation. You can start taking it at 62. Should you be planning to whether that would be a good thing for you or not? I mean, very rarely it is, but look, I mean, I guess not knowing that person's situation, I would say somewhere around 60 is probably. I mean, logistically, if you're not going to talk to anybody and you're like, when do I go bug the Social Security office about this? Because I'm just going to use whatever they say, then that's why I put like, yeah, right before you're 62, or at least when you're 62, go have that conversation, even if you're hell bent the fact that you're not going to take it until 67 or 70 or something like that. You can start going to have a conversation because there may be some stuff that you don't know about that you're going to find out, just like maybe you learned something on this webinar that you're like, man, I didn't know that. Well, there may be some other things with your particular situation that you don't know about, and it's good to go learn about those things. Whether you're going to learn about it at that meeting, I'm not sure. But anyway, it's probably start good to start talking about it at least by 60 or 61 if you haven't.
So strategize, begin the strategy conversation 60, 61, 62, but for actually like filing to claim how early before your benefit, like how early before you want to start receiving the benefits should
Yeah,
you
if
begin?
you're if you know, and even if you've done the planning, I've done planning with a lot of people, and we say, okay, it looks like from everything that we've talked about, it looks like that, that full retirement age actually would be good, or maybe even waiting until 68 because your wife is or whatever. Um, so if they know the date, I would say 3 months out.
Okay.
3 months out is should be plenty of time. I've heard some other people that have done it in less time online and got it started. But if there's any snafus, if there's any, oh, I didn't know that, let me do some research on this or that. I mean, you just want to do it out, let's say 3 to 6 months before.
This one is about, so as far as the future of Social Security, will you just quickly touch on who we're kind of depending on to make those decisions and those changes, like who's in charge of the Social Security program generally?
Um, Well, awesome question. I mean, we have a Social Security Administration, but I think the reality is it's our lawmakers, it's Congress and then the Senate to back them up, and then the president to sign something. So it's got to be a coordination. For the current president, if he was hell bent on saving Social Security, it would start from the top, actually. He's just the kind of person that says, I want this and I'm going to go do it. But in reality, it's going to be us talking to our congressmen and women and starting there. That would be my answer.
This one's kind of one on survivors benefits.
Okay.
So it says I'm 59 and my husband passed away 17 years ago. Can I draw on his Social Security at 62 and then claim mine at 67?
So he died at 42.
Yeah, it depends on how old he was when he passed away.
Oh, I thought you said oh, okay.
The
She's
individual is
that individual
59. They
is
died. The husband died 17 years ago. So, but if husband was 20 years older, who knows, right? So, but not included.
God, I never like to do this stuff on the fly. I like to I'm a kind of a sit back and analyze person. So,
From my understanding, this is one of the few that you can claim and then reclaim strategies left is the spousal, or I'm sorry, the survivor's benefit, where you can start receiving your survivor's benefit as early as 60, and then you can delay claiming on your own record, even up to 70 if you wanted to, and then refile to start on your record if it's higher than your survivor's benefits. Does that sound right?
yeah, it sounds right. And that's definitely, it's actually, you can do it as early as 50 if you're disabled. But yeah, you can definitely switch benefits again back to we can have a we can have a plan to do X for so many years, and then we're going to switch over to. So, yeah, you can definitely do that. When you get into survivor benefits, though, you have a lot more eligibility and restrictions. And so that's where I'm just always careful, and my brain's not in a mode to analyze at the moment. So, uh, that's
As
somebody's
long as
particular.
you're eligible for.
Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
you have to meet the eligibility. I mean, were you married at least 9 months? If you're divorced, were you married at least 10 years? And all those things that I put on there. And I think there's probably even more. I mean, I can't load these slides up with every single thing. It's just the more
A lot.
common things that I'm putting on that I'm putting on here. Um, so if they're survivor married before 60, and there's all kinds of restrictions. So
Right.
anyway,
This one is about if you have earned income and have claimed Social Security prior to your full retirement age, that delay of benefits. And I can try to find the slide too. So will you just explain that, like, decrease in your Social Security benefit if you have earned income before your full retirement age and you've already claimed Social Security? And I can't remember which slide the earned income stuff is on.
um, is that the taxable earnings? Or
So
I guess I don't understand the question actually.
it, let's say you're 62 and you have claimed your Social Security benefit, but you're still working and you're working full time. So let's say an individual has $100,000 in income. So they are going to have their Social Security benefit reduced because they have earned income and they are not their full retirement age yet. So I'm going to try to find the slide for the specific numbers here, but we just go over how that works, how it impacts the benefit.
Okay, so that is that retirement earnings test. So I think, right? So
Oh yeah, is that the
they've taken at 62 and so if earnings exceed, so this in
there we
2026,
go.
it's about 24.5 if I remember. So 24 480, I think. 2040 per month. So for every $2 above 24,480, so if you're talking about $100,000 in income, call it $75,000. So for every $2 above the limit, they're going to take out a dollar from your benefit. Now, when that changes is in the year you reach the full retirement age. So in the year that you're going to turn 67, even though you haven't, the limit for that year goes, they raise that income from 24,480 up to 65,160. So then for every $3 over that limit, you're going to get a dollar withheld from your benefit until the month that you reach full retirement age. So yeah, that's just some calculation I'd have to do. I'm not going to do on my in my head, but um, so that's that retirement earnings test. And so there's actually a link there to the earnings calculator. I did double check that works. And that earnings calculator is actually pretty easy to use on the SSA.gov website.
All right. And then let's find the slides on spousal benefits, and let's go over those again. Survivor, divorce spouse, spousal benefit. Okay, so a couple questions on spousal benefits. Let's see. And anybody, if you guys are still on the line and looking for the spousal benefits, if you guys have specifics, like your specific circumstances that you want to talk through, set up a coaching session with one of us. That's a lot more like it's going to be a lot better for you, for us to be able to look at, and even pulling your own earnings records, having us look at it. It's just going to be a better use of your time, so that we're not talking in generalities, so that it kind of applies to everybody. So shoot us an email again, coach@2sadvisors.com. Visit the financial planning resources page. Pop some time on Mike or my calendar. So, but overall, just refresh on what the spousal benefit looks like. So, Mike, would you just kind of walk us through this slide again, and just generally how the spousal benefit works?
So the primary, again, so the primary earner is going to you work through you start with your plan for that higher earner, what they're thinking in terms of, or from what I know about my client, that when it's going to be, when it looks like it might be the most beneficial time to end their career, sometime between 62 and 70. When are we gonna have them apply for benefits? And then obviously at that point too, then we're taking into account the spousal benefit. So if you're if you have do you have a working spouse? Did you have a non-working spouse? And usually that's someone that's staying home with the kids or whatever. Is we had somebody that took off a long time or hasn't worked. My One of my wife's best friends hasn't had a job, but she certainly works very hard, but she doesn't have a paying job, right? And um, so that non-working spouse can also receive the spousal benefit. So again, they have to be at least 62, and then they don't want to wait, in this case, past their full retirement age of 67, because they're going to get in essence, the maximum they can get under the spousal benefit, and that's 50% of the primary earner's wages. So, and again, if they take that early, whether it's 62 or 63 or 64, 65 or whatever, then the longer they wait, the less of a reduction they're going to be. So that there's a slide there. It shows the primary and spousal benefits starting at age 62, and they just base this on $1,000 PIA. So back to your example earlier, is that PIA is 1,000, and so you can look at this chart and kind of figure out if the primary person is going to take one of these amounts depending on their age, then that's what they're going to get. And that's these are fairly low amounts, right? And that's because um, we're only basing the PIA on $1,000, and it's also somebody that's taking their Social Security early at 62. So that's what this chart is. So I guess you got to be careful on being when you're going to look at a chart of these, just making sure you've got the right one. But you are going to have a reduction in your own benefit when you claim, and then again, if your spouse, depending on their age, um, are going to have a reduction if they're any younger than 67. Um, but they have to be at least 62 years old. You've had to be married at least 1 year, and it's only available for the lesser earning. I don't know what they call, a non-working spouse, whatever. Only if the primary earner is already collecting. So they have to be claiming or ready to claim theirs for you to be able to claim yours. Actually, they have had to file before you were able to collect on yours. How much more detail do you need?
The only thing that I would add, just based on one of the questions here, so I'm trying to lump it all into just like, hey, let's just refresh on this.
Yeah.
The only thing that I'll add is, so if your if the lower earner if the lower earner has a working record and they are eligible for their own benefit. Okay, so let's say that they are 5 years older, and so they are already 67. They claim their Social Security based on their own record. So they claimed at their full retirement age, they do not receive a reduction in benefit amount. And let's say that their payment is on off their own record is $500 a month. Okay. So
Okay.
they're now getting $500 a month off their own record. The higher income earner spouse, who is 5 years younger, waits 5 years, claims their Social Security benefit. Now, the spouse is still eligible for spousal benefits. As soon as their spouse claims, now they become eligible for those spousal benefits. Spouse waited until full retirement age. They get their full primary insurance amount. Let's call it $3,000. So spouse ought to be eligible for 50% of that, 1,500, which is more than their $500.
Way more than the 500, right?
Way more. So it totally makes sense
Yeah.
for them to have that.
So this is where um, we talk about an optimized strategy because, again, you could say, well, if everybody just took their stuff at 70, then you should be making the most money. Well, not in this case. It was actually beneficial for the one to start their benefit, knowing that when their younger primary earner got to that full retirement benefit, then they were going to be able to have a much higher than their own record. And so forget their own record. Now they go on the spousal benefit. And
They
then obviously
automatically step up into the spousal
they
benefit.
automatically step up. It's not even something that
Automatically.
they have to know. It's
Yep.
just it's in the system. And so yeah, that's where we talk about, what would be the maximum if you could project out what the maximum that you're going to get in Social Security if you did some different strategies based on your situation.
Yep.
So here's your situation. Let's analyze it, and Gosh, in that case, it makes a lot of sense to do exactly what you just said to do. Why, I mean,
Yep.
why wouldn't you? So let's
Just,
take that benefit as early as possible, and normally taking it as early as not good, but in essence, you got some uh, free money, whatever you call it. It's not on your record, or it was on your record, but I don't need my record later on, right? Because my higher earning spouse is going to hit 67, and then I'm going to take half of his
yeah.
and I'm going to then, because I'm way older than 70 or the FRA age, I'm going to get 50% of that, and I'm going to get that for the rest of my life. And then if something happens to him, then I'm going to actually end up taking probably most of or all of his
Right.
benefit because you're going to go to the higher benefit. So you can actually change again if something happens. And so
Yeah.
again, we're running through all the different scenarios and based on this couple, in this case, in your example, this couple. So yeah, this is all
Yeah.
part of the maximizing the Social Security earnings, not just listening to, oh, just wait and you'll make more money if you wait. Well, not actually in every situation. So love these examples actually.
Yeah. And I know it's just a very complicated topic. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Gosh, is there people on 4:30? Is there still people on?
You still have a couple people on. I
Wow,
do
that's
think
great.
the rest of the questions I do think are a little specific to individual circumstances. So I'm very sorry if we didn't get to your question, but we would love to talk to you one on one so that we can get very nitty gritty onto your situation and answer a little bit more directly. So I think we are good to go. I will put, woo, jumped to something else. So I'll put the QR code back on the screen as I finish this off here. Again, thank you so much for your time today, guys. If you hang out till the end of the webinar here, you'll be sent over to complete a survey. We'd love to get your feedback from the presentation today. Give us ideas for what other presentations you'd like to see in the future. And again, the recording will be available in the workshop library next week, or just shoot us an email to this coach at 2westadvisors.com. So, any parting words for us, Mike?
No, the last thing I wanted to say was, well, obviously, thanks for being here. This is being recorded, so I'm not just talking to the two couple people that are on, but I think I said it earlier, but if I didn't, one of the other reasons that I think Social Security will be um, in essence shored up somehow is that it injects a $1.5 trillion into the economy every year. So it's not something we necessarily think about, but all those Social Security payments, people are spending that money that's in our economy. And the powers that be know that. And so, if they go to wipe out that program, I mean, think about that. You're in essence wiping out $1.5 trillion if that was to actually happen where we're literally going to shut down that system. So it would be devastating for our economy. And so for that reason alone, I think that this is going to be something that gets solved, or at least gets changed for the better. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, thanks to everybody that was able to make it today, and for those that hung on the very end and all that. So hope hope you learned something. I love doing it, and thank you so much, Amber. I love when we can go back and forth on some of that stuff because my brain is certainly different, works different than yours, and I'm like, oh yeah, that would have been easy, that would have been great to say, but I didn't think of it right in that moment. So it's perfect. So
Yeah, this
anyway,
works
thanks
out great.
for asking me to do this. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Mike. And we will be back next month with another one. Bye, everybody.
Can't wait. Bye, everybody. Thanks.